what I'm occupied with right now is that some of the exercises look very cruel. I mean, from an outsider's point of view.
You're talking about the bioenergetics?
Yes, the bioenergetics and all this physicality that we are holding people and there's kicking and screaming. But if we, I ask you about the last exercise thing. In the finishing of Marie-Louise's work,
yes,
you wanted to ground her,
yes,
to let her come back in her body.
Yes.
And we saw that she became very, very angry and she questioned the thing. She said, can I trust you? And she wanted to really give all her strength, and she didn't know if we all could hold her. What is that about?
What happened was that I think she did a good, verbal therapy and psychodrama. And we could have stopped there and left it. But then I really wanted to check. I wanted to test where she was with her body. So when I said, I want you to ground you in your body, it wasn't necessarily just to calm her down. I wanted to put her into a stress exercise that would be a kind of a body test. What I used was one of David Berceli's exercises. David Berceli is he works with extreme traumatization, and he goes around the world teaching people to do his exercises. And this is like the main exercise that you end up with.
With the legs.
With the legs open. And what that is about is that there's a lot of correlating information now amongst the different scientific fields and neurology and biology of the body, that several authors talk about human beings live in a human cage, and this cage is created by society and by their family, so that we are not free to express all our feelings. So we freeze. And Robert Scare actually compares us to animals in a zoo. We freeze. And when you get your client to lift the pelvis with the feet flat together and the knees apart, it is stretching the psoas muscle, which is deep. You spoke
about the traumatic...
Yes. And this muscle, in most people, is partly held, partly contracted. And what it stores is all our frozen, emotions that we couldn't express. And in Marie-Louise's case, she has a story of having been abused as a child, and also, she also had some very traumatic experiences, seeing the violence at home and so on. So I was like testing her to see if she has any of this post-traumatic stress disorder tension in her body.
That's why we completed her session with the body exercise.
Yes. And it worked, as you saw. It worked incredibly because it stretched the psoas, and then she was able to go into the shaking. And Robert Scare says that human beings need to shake out the freeze in their body. All these feelings that we've stored, we need to shake and tremble, because all mammals do this.
And this is connected to Reich and Löwen's body exercise in the beginning also.
It's connected to Lowen in as much as Lowen observed this, but he didn't have all this scientific knowledge that we have now. So he was a genius in a way, to be able to experiment, and so his exercise book is called The Way to Vibrant Health. Exactly. And I mean, he did this like, what can we say, 30, 40 years before we have the knowledge that we have now. But now it's undisputed that human beings need to shake like all mammals do. If a dog is frightened, it trembles, If a horse is frightened, it trembles. And that is the way that mammals release their stress. They shake to recover.
So this is the part of a post-traumatic treatment?
Yes.
And then I was thinking, is the group work the natural background to some traumatic experience like rape and other things.
Yes.
When you work with that, is it a better thing to have the group work building up a trust, or is that easier than to work alone with the client?
I think it's better to have the group, because if I had been treating Marie-Louise alone and she went like this, I wouldn't be able to hold her.
Right.
And what she was getting into was her infantile omnipotent rage.
Yeah, she became very, very strong.
Yes, because she actually shared with us verbally, you know, that she got very angry as a child at one point. So I imagined her holding back and repressing this anger because she was not allowed to explode. And she felt that her mother and her grandparents were weak. So nobody would have been able to hold her to allow her to express all that rage and, you know, anger and crying and sadness.
So it needed 8 people to hold her down.
Yes, that's
and then she started to cry.
Yes, yes, because then
like a baby then.
Yes, she tested her omnipotent rage, and then she realized that you know, it was omnipotent.
So is it very important for the client to be in such a safe safe surrounding, so you can be as angry as pushing away 8 people?
Exactly.
So that is the strength.
Yes, yes. The group has to be able to contain the client no matter what the client does.
Right. And the group has also the plight and the empathy to go in and support. There was this completion of the travel, the journey Marie-Louise did, when you suggested that we all went in a big circle, and she went between everyone on one foot. What was that about?
That was...
how did you come to that?
Yes, I came to that because she was defiant towards the whole village and towards her family. So here's someone who as a child has made a decision. You know, I am strong enough, I can stand on my own, and I'm not going to be vulnerable. I will not show any weakness or vulnerability to anyone because I don't trust any of you. So she has developed a lifestyle of being alone and standing for herself and being independent. On the one hand, it was good because she survived with that. It was her survival method. But on the other hand, it is now hindering her because she recognizes that it gets her, you know, alienated from... She could be closer to people sometimes, but she doesn't trust anyone to support her because she's got this contempt very often that comes up. You can't support me. You know, if I really let go and show you all my feelings, you're going to melt, just like my mother did. My mother was helpless, and my grandfather and my grandmother were the same. Nobody could tolerate my feeling. So I needed her to feel that not only could she get angry with the village and that we took that anger, nobody broke down, nobody cried, you know, we respected her anger, we took it, but then that we could also support her, so I did it symbolically.
And was that something you invented right now, or something that you sometimes...
No, it's a technique that I've used before once in a while.
You used that before, so
yes.
This step, and it also made it possible for the different members of the group to say different things in character to her.
Yes,
like the father spoke and
Yes.
said that he wanted to support her. But
yes, that's right. And for her to feel physically, you know, that she can walk with one leg and each group member can carry her. So these are, if you like, physical experiences to reinforce the psychological knowledge that she has.
Yes, and enactment of some specific traumas, like Marie-Louise bodies has showed her the push in the back and the slam of the door, which was a very specific image that came out of the conversation, and I went on that as a strong physical. There is a lot of memories restored, and we worked on that as a scene. So the client has
very good.
and the client has a lot of knowledge. Where are the triggers?
In the body.
Because Marie-Louise wanted to work in this case, and she was open to us filming it. So we were looking for her vulnerable spots together with her.
Yes, and I like very much when you stepped in and you intervened and you said, you know, I have an idea. Because I was a little lost there as to what direction to take. So you really helped me very much by saying, you know, now, you know, let's provoke, because she was like holding back.
I don't know.
And I felt that you needed her to get into a scene where she was provoked.
That is something I called the sadistic impulse in the therapy. I mean, the good sadism, which is very strange. Why good cruelty is there? But you have to dare to. Sometimes the client jumps into a situation that she or he doesn't know, or even the therapist takes some risks sometimes, and you have to provoke turns in a long session. And I'm very fascinated by this because I know how the impulse to that comes. And I've been also kicked to do things that, and then it's up to me to do them, of course, and the client. So this is what I recognize inside myself. When you were opening the session, you were also working with the Reichian or with the bioenergetic mode. You opened our bodies. What was the principle about the niveaus of memories that you wanted to reach in those
when I was doing the warming up?
Yes, the warming up. Where were you aiming at?
Well, that was more to people had shared and introduced themselves a bit to you, know, to everyone else. So we had a little verbal sharing, so we felt a little more trust. We knew a bit about each of us. And I think that I'm never, I'm always fascinated by how when we share our bodies, instead of sharing our, you know, like what we work at or whatever, verbal sharing, that the body sharing bonds us. It makes us attached. It makes us become a team much more quickly.
Much more than verbal contact.
Much more than verbal.
Much more.
Yes.
It's like, well, there are tensions.
It's something like a tribal ritual.
Yeah. And maybe, this is how also I start rehearsal processes when I work in theater, that we are bonding physically. You can talk also, and you should talk, but this is something completely different. But you were referring to the memories, the niveau of memories in this body work. When we were talking in a little pause, we were talking about the bioenergetics and memories. So we have the frozen memories that we talked about there. And are there other areas or other knowledges about this?
The frozen memories are located wherever the trauma happened.
All right.
If you're talking about sexual abuse, the frozen memories are usually in the muscles of the inside of the thighs, you know, the psoas muscle and the pelvis. And often women who have been sexually abused talk about being frozen there. They don't feel anything. They maybe they're married and, you know, they get sexually excited, but they have never experienced a total orgasm, gone the whole way. So that needs to be opened up. Other people might have a trauma somewhere else, you know. It might be in the shoulder, on the neck, or on the chest. It depends on where the threat was. And that's where you store the memory. But it's not only the external memory, you know, the traumatic thing that is done to you on the outside. It's also that you also store your breathing rate, your heart rate, the level of stress hormones in your blood, and even your brain waves. All that is stored. And there's a scientist. He's the professor in the United States in UCL, Antonio Damasio, who talks about when we experience something strong, the body makes a somatic marker.
That is the word, markers.
Somatic
we were talking about somatic markers.
And then the person remains for the rest of their life with that somatic marker. And in trauma, the somatic marker can be a sound, you know, like an explosion, or a gunshot, or the slamming of a door, or your father screaming at your mother, or your mother screaming at your father, whatever it is. Or a bomb dropping, or it can be a visual thing, a flash of lightning, or an explosion, the flash.
So all these are war traumas.
Yes, all these markers are stored, visual auditory, kinesthetic in the body, and also the breathing rate, you know, the blood pressure, all these things. And so what Robert Scares says is that for the human being to recover, you have to train the person with body work to store neutralizing somatic markers.
New ways of remembering new things.
It's a kind of conditioning.
Yes.
So that the fear somatic marker is neutralized by the new somatic marker. And this happens in the procedural memory. We have three kinds of memory. We have the explicit, which is our conscious memory, you know, the journalist memory, the where, when, why, what, who, and that's stored in the hippocampus. And then we have the implicit memory, which is the memory of stored in the amygdala, and that is more like what you could call unconscious memory. You know, the feeling of something, the smell is you can't identify the person. Like very often,
atmosphere is more like an atmosphere.
Yes, an atmosphere, exactly. You know, a kind of a feeling about a situation, and without very much detail. And then finally, you've got the procedural one, which is about training. So where the neurologists are now, and you know, the sort of cutting-edge people working with trauma are saying is that in order for the traumatized person to recover, you have to train the procedural memory, you know, by things like bioenergetic body work, where you go over the same, like for example, training the memory would be to train the person always to breathe from the belly, because that relaxes you, to breathe out twice as long.
So homework with certain tasks.
And you have to do this over and over again. You have to repeat it to neutralize the negative somatic marker that the trauma gave you.
So behind a lot of traumatic experiences is self-medication, drinking, drugs, and other ways of trying to heal.
Yes.
So people are trying a lot of things, and maybe excessive training, and I mean training of the body. People are trying to heal themselves for things they feel.
I think I would advise people not to, you know, try to do it by alcohol or by drugs.
No, but I think they do it unconsciously.
Yes, but I think people survive like that, but then the end is pretty tragic, because a lot of them do become alcoholics or drug addicts.
Yes, I'm more referring to
suicide.
Yes,
you know?
yes, I'm referring to this unknown territory that you are working in. It's very unknown. I think people get very surprised, even in your workshop, with people who are healthy. I mean, people who can go here and they want to go here. They also I discover new things when I see you work today. This is endless. I mean, how you come in contact with things you completely have repressed. So this film that we are doing, this conversation we are doing, we're trying to get people to dare to take this journey. That is the greatest or biggest question I have. Why is this tremendous fear of getting help?
I can immediately associate two things. The first one is that it takes a lot of emotional courage.
And what is emotional courage?
Emotional courage is like to dare to surrender to your deepest feelings that often you're afraid to express because society doesn't approve of them. You know, like like Marie-Louise did, to scream and, you know, kick around. An adult, normal person doesn't do that, you know, or to break down and cry deeply. We're so inhibited by society in expressing. This is the cage that Robert Scare talks about.
No, the cage. What drove you to start this journey? What drove you? What made you to do it yourself?
What drove me was my own war shock. What drove me was the fact that I'm a survivor of the Second World War. I was a child, small child, and I remember the terror that I went through with the Japanese threatening us, you know, and all the time afraid that like it was very common that they would come into the Chinese villages and pick up someone that they thought was a spy for the Allies and cut, get this poor person to kneel and cut his head off, or execute them and shoot them. So I lived with this fear. I've worked a lot with the tension in my own neck. And then I as an adult, it was by no accident that I decided to become a psychiatrist. And unconsciously, I think I took psychiatry as a profession because I wanted to help myself.
That's very common.
Yes, exactly.
That we
so
do.
A lot of social workers, psychologists are the same. They go into these professions because they're trying to recover from their own trauma.
Yes.
And it's unconscious. But then it became conscious. It reached a point where, I realized, hey, you have to go into therapy. Because
why is that so? In what way were you inhibited by this war trauma?
I was inhibited in like holding back, in freeze, in holding back, in diminishing the intensity of my life, of being afraid.
So you felt you were afraid of a lot of things?
Yes. And checking.
Intimate relations?
Yes, and insecurity and mistrust, just like Marie-Louise. So as I gained psychiatric knowledge and as I sort of lost my illusion about just talking about it, because when I decided to go into therapy, I trained as a group analyst. So I had 4 years of group analytic therapy, talking therapy. And of course it helped me very much. I gained a lot of insights, which I could use. I had a very good idea of my family story, where I was, where I am at that point, and then where can I go? What are my strengths, what are my weaknesses? But what I had not worked at all on was, what the war had done to me in my body. I had no idea.
And there are so many persons in Sweden and everywhere who have gone through horrible war experiences, and they give away to the same traumas to children because they never talk about it.
Yes.
Because they have such a shame. And then the children, I meet a lot of children in Swedish schools who have parents who have suffered atrocities.
Yes.
And sometimes children speak freely about things they just fantasize about.
Yes.
They have a shock.
Yes.
They speak their shock.
Yes, exactly.
So I know what you're talking about. So this is still, we have so many wars, and all the veterans from the Vietnam War came back and gave a lot to the science, so to speak. We know a lot of these things that we are talking now about.
Yes.
And still it's not very well spread.
Yes.
Still, is it in the human such a shame to meet a person who have been humiliated? Do we humans get afraid of other people who have been so rejected and hurted and humiliated?
Yes, I think it's some of that.
We cannot take it.
Exactly. I would say that the biggest problem is that talking therapists lack. Like, first of all, they are very afraid of these strong feelings because in their training they never experienced this intensity of feeling.
Right.
When they were being supervised in real cases, they never experienced this. And of course, they don't experience it very much because clients are not stupid. Clients come to therapists and they assess your ego strength. They check you out.
Can you say that in a very popular way? How do they flatter them, or what? Are we seductive enough not to show our worst sides, or what are you talking about, Carlos?
What I'm talking about is that.
Do you mean we don't
No, I've
you
seen
don't say
this.
the truth?
I think that clients will share the emotions that they think the therapist is capable of taking.
So it's another family situation then.
Exactly.
Again.
Exactly. It repeats itself because they came from a prison in the family situation,
and they find another one.
Metaphorically, they step into a prison with a therapist. Because then they're doing the therapy to protect the therapist too. I mustn't upset him or her too much. And this is ridiculous. Yeah?
So do you think that the group has some tendency of being too confluent or too too supportive? Is that a risk that we are too much supportive in a group?
No, because I think clients need this, because very often it's the first time that they get this
support at all.
Support. You know, I have a lot of clients who've been in individual therapy, and you know, they never got to the very bottom of their problem.
So the support is something. Without support, nothing can grow.
Exactly.
This is the
group. The support creates a container. And you know, there's a popular saying in therapy, no container, no growth.
Mm. So you don't believe at all in individual therapy?
No, I do. I think it's very useful.
Yeah?
You know, I do it myself too.
Okay.
But I also recognize the limits of it, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, not everyone needs to go through a deep body work. Yes? Some people just have little traumas, and, you know, you can sort them out by talking perfectly. Yeah. But then I chose to work with a lot of people who are very traumatized.
Yes.
Partly because of my own story, because it's like I feel what helped me was this kind of body work and the bioenergetics. That's when my real therapy started.
But I trust you when you work, because I can sense in your body that you have some experience. I don't know how I can sense it, but I sense that you are talking true now. That it's very important to open up, that you have at least an idea that the other person understands what you are at and can take what will come. So, but there was this very good example when Marie-Louise challenged you and said,
yes.
Are you strong enough, Carlos, to hold me? Which yes. I love that moment, because yes. that was a very open
yes.
conflict.
Yes.
So the therapist has a chance of stabilize it with
yes.
the group.
Yes.
Where I could really see that the group was necessary
yes.
as helpers.
Yes.
That was good.
Yes. Yes.
Because I can only trust a person who is not trustworthy as God. I
yes.
cannot trust one person. I wouldn't do that. I think that's silly. We are so vulnerable. Everyone, even therapists. But you have a knowledge. That is very... Are you also medically trained?
Yes. Yes.
So in order to give us all the facts and structure
yes,
in this work?
Yes, I use my medical knowledge. Yes.
And that I also think is security, really. This is not vague, it's very
yes.
factual. But it looks very strange. I mean, people cuddle up in along cushions and on the floor and supporting, and it can be very provocative. Why should all those people have so nice and fun and emotional in this little group? I'm outside watching this. They can do that for themselves. Don't you think that our video can provoke?
Well, yes, but also I'm hoping by showing this that, you know, there's an alternative way of working in therapy, and many people go to therapy and are disappointed, or, you know, or maybe they think that, well, you know, I've talked about my problem and that's enough, you know, but they're not happy, that there's something that's still not working in them, like it was my story, and then they want to go further, and I want to show that, and also long for my colleagues to see this. I long for psychiatrists to see this. I long for social workers, you know.
So there is an audience for this work.
That's right.
And they are already prepared to watch.
Yes, yes. Yes, because now scientifically the timing is perfect, because there's so much research coming out now.
Yes.
That, you know, you have to work with the body in certain kinds of clients.
And the vision is that we all will dance salsa or do and enjoy, I think.
Yes.
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 It's my vision in a way, that
yes.
we all can play with the body.
Yes, yes. And what...
If it's not salsa, it is... What do you dance? You dance...
Well, I'm learning salsa.
Yes, yes, yes.
And cha-cha-cha and bachata.
And
know.
Also this Sevillanas.
Yes, yes. And,
so we can enjoy.
Yes, and I enjoy it. And it's very interesting, because in my dance class, I see people who are not able to enjoy it very much because they're so frozen in their bodies.
Yeah.
But I've worked very hard to loosen mine up, and I think it's...
So do you sincerely enjoy
yes.
your body now?
Yes, I do, yes, yes. And bioenergetics is very much about unfreezing the body and regaining all the body potential that you have, you know, and to be able to express every feeling.
Yeah.
to express, you know, like it doesn't have to be good, but if you're going to be afraid, to actually feel it in the body. If you're going to be angry, to do that. If you feel sexual excitement, to feel it in the body too. So that the body, the legs can tremble in rage, in terror, you know, in sexual excitement. But to be alive. Lowen in bioenergetics talk very much about, you know, the way to vibrant health. To be free.
Alive.
Yes, to be alive.
Be alive. Be alive.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been
Today.
a pleasure to work with you again.
Always.